Good evening, everyone. I think we'll get started. I just first wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming. It's great to see such a great crowd. My name is Michelle Daniels, and I'm a director for the Quesnel Chamber of Commerce. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Perfect. I just want to start by saying we're hosting this forum on the traditional territory of the Caledonia, where we live, work, and play on this beautiful land. I am going to introduce our candidates, but first just wanted to say that Denise Bardois from the NDP was unable to attend tonight. So I'm just going to introduce the candidates from left to right. So to my left, first we have Coralie Oakes, Independent. Second, we have Randy Thompson from the BC Green Party. And third, we have Sheldon Clare from the Conservative Party. And just wanted to do a little bit of thank yous here. Thank you very much to Jarrett Dick from the Toastmasters, who will be doing our facilitating and our timing for tonight's event. Also, thank you to our sponsor, the BC Northern Real Estate Board, for sponsoring this event again this year. And there is some information and pamphlets at the back. As well, thank you to Toby Mack, who is here from Rogers and will be recording the forum at the back there. The Chamber will inform everyone when it's ready on YouTube, and then if people weren't able to make it, they can watch it. The candidates will have opening comments for 2 minutes each. Our moderator will start from left to right, changing each time which candidates speak. The candidates will be watching the timekeeper for the red light. We are not high-tech enough to have microphones that shut off. But the moderator, if someone does go over time, will let the candidate know. Questions recently sent to the Chamber of Commerce have been prepared for our moderator to ask. The order asked will be in the time frame that they came in. The candidates will have 1 minute each to answer the question. We will not be taking questions from the floor tonight. If you do have questions, if we have time, you could bring them to the back to Kathy that's waving at everyone and myself, and we can see if we have time to put them in. The time frame for this event is 6 to 8 p.m., so we're going to try to stick to that. And the candidates will also at the end have a 3-minute time for their closing remarks. Tonight's moderator for the event is from the Quesnel Chamber of Commerce. She is our Vice President, Lisa Footet.
Hi, thank you everybody. So we're just going to get right into it. We're going to get started with our opening remarks. You're going to have 2 minutes each, and we're going to start just closest to me to begin with. So if you'd like to get us going, Coralie.
I'd like to start, if I may, and begin in a good way and recognize tonight that we're gathered on the Caledonia Nation, and would like to honor our elders and our knowledge keepers. Tonight is an important opportunity for us to share our vision for where we believe our communities, and it's a large area, should move forward. I'm excited about this opportunity, and I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce, the Toastmasters, Shaw, Northern Real Estate Board for supporting this. And Toby, thanks for being here. It's important to make sure our message gets out. I love this community. I love this region, and it has been a privilege to represent this region for over a decade. And prior to that, serving on local government. And I know that the best opportunities for our region is when we come together, when we unite, when we work collaboratively to move things forward. And that means all levels of government. We can't do it alone. We have to be able to work as a team from the federal, provincial, local levels, and with community groups. And so many of you that I see tonight have been community leaders, and I want to acknowledge the work that you've done. So how can an independent voice be your voice in Victoria? This is going to be a very close election. Many people think that it could very well be close to a tie. Your voice in this election could play a significant role in being the balance of power in this next parliament. That is going to matter. And I want to commit to you that I'll use my years and decades of experience to ensure that your voice is heard in Victoria and that we move important projects forward.
Thank you, Coralie. And one thing I was remiss with is our timekeeper will notify you when there's 30 seconds left with the yellow light. I apologize. Randy?
Turn it on. My name is Randy Thompson. I've lived in Quesnel since 2006, but I lived here before when I worked at the radio station, Cariboo Radio, when it was over by the bridge many years ago. As far as possibly tying an election being a tie, it's just a question of who I'm going to be tied with. I think that's the real question. I've been on the council of the BC Green Party for 2 years now. I've always been a green person. I grew up with a forest in my backyard. I understand what the environment is all about and the value that it has. And my main purpose in this election, win or lose, is to dispel the myth of what forestry is and what the Green Party is. Because there's a lot of people that believe that the forestry pays a whole bunch of bills and funds a bunch of services, and that's really not true at all. The money goes to corporations and to forestry workers. We don't really benefit at all, and that's through the work of David Broadland. There's lots of people that are fighting to bring the truth forward. It's just one of those things that you fight. There's often people believe things that aren't true. Politics is like a religion. It's what you believe, and it becomes real for you. So it becomes your truth. It doesn't necessarily mean it's factually true. I've got some information about myself personally. If you wanted to take one of these at the end, come and see me. They just didn't want us laying them out there, but I'm proud to be a BC Green member, and I'm proud to do what needs to be done to change the way we run society. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Sheldon?
Thank you. I'm Sheldon Clare. My parents were actually married in Quesnel in 1960, and they had to elope from that more northerly city called Prince George, which is where I make my home at present. And it's a real privilege for me to be here tonight. It's a real privilege for me to be running for office. I take this entire process extremely seriously, and I'm very pleased to see so many familiar faces, people whose doors I've knocked on, had conversations with, and met downtown, and just seen around town. It's an important riding. It's a central riding. This riding is going to be one of the major parts of making change in this province. As a priority for me, I want to see the Quesnel Interconnector built. It is a major project that affects the entire north of the province and allows the south to be connected with the rest of us. This project has been on the books for decades, and it's time to make it happen. Furthermore, I want to make sure that I am representing the entire riding. I've been putting 30,000 kilometers on my old Chevy, and it's been complaining to me quite voraciously about that bit of effort, but I've been trying to get to every corner of this riding and trying to meet every single voter. And I know that that's not possible in the time that we've had, but I'm really pushing to do it. Because your voices matter to me, and I want to make sure that I understand the concerns of every component of this major riding when I am elected to take them forward to Victoria. And that's what I'm going to do. It's not about me bringing policy back to you and saying this is what we're doing, like it or not. It's about you telling me your concerns and making sure that I'm the right person to get those concerns properly relayed and properly heard in the corridors of the legislature, and to make sure that they're acted upon.
Thank you, Sheldon. So we're going to move into our questions that were submitted for our provincial candidates. Each question is going to be asked in a random order. I'm going to read the questions twice, and you will have 1 minute to answer. And again, our timekeeper will let you know when 30 seconds is up. The first round of questions, Sheldon will go first, followed by Randy, and then Coralie. What steps will your government take to combat the opiate epidemic in our communities? How will guidance and support differ from the current programs available to addicts? I'll read that one more time. What steps will your government take to combat the opiate epidemic in our communities? How will guidance and support differ from the current programs available to our addicts? Sheldon?
Thank you for the question. One of the things that the Conservative Party has clearly articulated is that what we want to see is more long-term psychiatric care facilities in this province that are of significant size to deal with the growing opiate crisis. We want to make sure that addicts get the treatment they need, and those who are not treatable are able to be properly cared for so that they are not causing the damage to our downtown businesses and our families and our communities. We also want to end decriminalization. That has been a major failed policy. The police have been quite clear that their hands have been tied in dealing with minor offenses, and these minor offenses grow into major offenses, and it's repeated and repeated and repeated, and we're seeing businesses getting thrashed all the time, and it cannot be allowed to continue. We're going to also be ending safe supply. Safe supply was never intended to be a be-all and end-all for everything. It was intended to be a narrow treatment focused on particular individuals. That's what we're going to do.
Thank you, Sheldon. Randy?
Well, let me combat that one. We're coming from a completely different perspective in the Green Party. There are many people who are addicted to opioids and other substances that got there through no fault of their own. They have a car accident, they take a prescription drug, they find themselves addicted. There could be abuse victims, they could have been sexually abused as a child. There's a ton of reasons, and each one of them is unique. And it's hard to just make policy to cover everything. So our plan is to look at people as individuals, treat them with dignity, understand what their problems really are. Safe supply is an important point because there's toxic drugs out in the street, and we need to allow that to be dealt with in a way that is through the medical profession, and the Dogwood model of expanding healthcare facilities will address the opioid crisis as well as just the programs that are needed.
Thank you, Randy. Coralie?
Thanks, Lisa. I don't think there's probably a family out there in this community that doesn't know somebody that's impacted. And I think that as a community, we need to come together. As a region, we need to come together because, quite frankly, we don't have the services. So if you look at the continuum of care, and I would start right at the level of education, and how do we make sure we have the supports in our schools and make sure that we have the health care available. And finally, whoever the next MLA will be, you will have conversations with families that are desperately looking for support for their loved ones. I've sat in those rooms with families, and it is so difficult to find access to treatment or recovery for anyone in this region. It is time that we stand up and we say that we deserve the same equitable treatment and access to services that the urban areas do, and my commitment to all of you is I will do that.
Thank you. And our next question, we will go in the order of Randy, Sheldon, and Coralie. I'll read the question twice. What are your government's plans to address the continued housing crisis in northern communities? What are your government's plans to address the continued housing crisis in northern communities? Randy?
Well, first of all, housing has become an investment scheme. It's not a right. It's never been treated as a right. Our three rights are food, shelter, water. We need shelter or we die. And housing is out of the reach of most people. Rents have gone crazy. It's very difficult for a lot of people, especially young people, to buy a house or find something that's adequate to live in. So we're looking at changing regulations, smaller housing units, building almost like communities where you can have land that you can set up little communities in that are close to infrastructure. The Green Party is not against housing at all. we need more of it, and they're looking at producing 26,000 housing units per year to move forward for the need for housing.
Thank you. Sheldon?
I must say I'm enjoying the Christmas light display that we have here. Well, the Conservative Party has a number of ideas about this, and one of them is to get rid of the carbon tax because that's making everything expensive, which is contributing to the housing crisis. We also need to take steps to work very closely with our federal partners with regards to immigration and where immigrants who are going, and to make sure that where they're being encouraged to live, that the services are there to support large influxes of students and immigrants. As well, we want to make sure we're working with the cities and the communities to meet the needs of the community so that we're not creating more problems by having too much compression into small areas. So we want to make sure we're working with people to meet the needs of communities and people around the riding.
Thank you. Coralie?
This is a great question because I think we're sitting actually in a room where we help solve the housing crisis. Look, I think trades training is critical for our region. If you want to solve the housing crisis, we've got to start training for skilled trades training, and we need to make sure that the access is here locally in our communities. And that means we need to look at rural adjustment grants for our smaller community colleges like this one, so that we can make sure that we have a sustainable access to training, that you don't have to wait 6 years to get your ticket, whether you want to be a carpenter or whether you want to be an electrician. We need to make sure we have that local access. Now, I also want to give a shout out to the District of Wells. I was reading their report, and they talk about the green rush. They talk about the ability to have the eco homes. There's so many great ideas that we have that we just need to implement. Again, bringing people together, looking at best practices, and at the heart of it, let's train the people to build the homes that we want to live in.
Thank you. You guys are speedy. Question number 3, our order will be Coralie, Randy, and Sheldon. And the question is, how will your government address the affordability crisis that BC is facing? One more time, how will your government address the affordability crisis that BC is facing? Coralie?
Well, I mean, this is going to be a tough one in a minute, so I'm sure that we're going to have a lot more opportunities to delve into this, but I want to talk with small business for a moment, to talk about the affordability challenges that a lot of the small businesses are facing. We can't be the most expensive jurisdiction in North America, whether it's housing, whether it's taxation, whether it's all of those layers, and not expect that we have an affordability challenge. So we need to address that. One of the ways that we can do that is if we look at, when we were in government, we had something called a small business lens. So every piece of legislation that was brought forward into government had a small business lens on how that is going to actually impact in the community. I'd like to translate that now. So you have a vibrant small business, you have a vibrant downtown. How do you make sure you have affordability for young people? We have to make sure that we have the services available for people in our communities, and that starts with making sure you've got access to a good job, you grow the economy, and at the heart of it, you need to make sure, again, you're reducing the regulations, not the regulations, the red tape and the bureaucracy, and I know we're going to have lots more chance to talk about this.
Thank you, Coralie. Randy?
It's an issue that affects everybody because we all live in a system where we have to earn enough money to pay our bills or we're on the street. It's unfair to everyone because that system was created by corporate greed. Everything is owned by just a very few people. Major corporations are all owned by other major corporations, and it turns out that we are living in a corporate world. The Green Party sees communities as the key, not having a supply chain that's coming from everywhere else. There's so many things that can be done to decorporatize our world by changing regulations, changing rules and laws, and making it easier for people to live within their community without having to be at the mercy of corporate greed. That is one of the major things that global Greens around the world. It's breaking the cycle that the stranglehold of corporations have on us, and it's not easy, but it needs to be done and it will take time.
Thank you. Sheldon?
I think what needs to be done to deal with affordability is to deal with inflation. And the way you deal with inflation is you start dealing with the excess taxation that we're all suffering. The taxation crisis that we have is one that I've never seen before in history. We're being taxed at levels that are unparalleled, and it needs to be dealt with. Notwithstanding that, we have a $115 billion debt in this province, or close to it. And that debt is being added to every year by a deficit spending. That's spending more money than you take in. We've got to start budgeting responsibly so that people are able to prosper in this province, and we've got to get businesses back to being able to hire people and being able to develop and grow. We've got to make sure that our economy is good, and then the people will have money. That will help with affordability.
Thank you. Our next question, our order will go back to Sheldon, Randy, and Coralie. This one's a long one, so bear with me. Many people in Quesnel are without a doctor. What will your government do to address our community's healthcare challenges? And why are unvaccinated nurses not being rehired by Northern Health, even though mandates were lifted on July 26, 2024? What is the plan for unvaccinated nurses to be able to return to work? Again, many people in Quesnel are without a doctor. What will your government do to address our community's healthcare challenges? And why are unvaccinated nurses not being hired by Northern Health? Even though the mandates were lifted on July 26, 2024, what is the plan for unvaccinated nurses to be able to return to work?
Thank you for the question, Lisa. Well, the Conservative Party has a bit of a different stand on it than the NDP, which has claimed that it's ended the mandates, but it really hasn't. It's made it very difficult for those removed healthcare workers to get back and work. Many of them are probably not going to come back and work. What we need to do is make nursing, medicine, and support services in hospitals attractive jobs once again. I come from a family with many nurses in it, and they've had a very difficult time. The career is not a lot of fun anymore. If we're going to get doctors to be here, there need to be incentives for them to come, and then there needs to be incentives for them to stay. And I think that's the approach we need to take to make sure that we have the medical people here that we need. I think we're looking at only having 5 doctors in Quesnel in the next year. 5 doctors for thousands of people. That is completely ridiculous. And Quesnel is not the only community facing that crisis.
Thank you. Randy?
Well, surprisingly, I agree with Sheldon on a point that we do need to incentivize, yes, we do need to incentivize and reward doctors coming in from other places, other countries, other provinces. That is something that is necessary. And workers, healthcare workers and nurses, there are lots of them in BC. They have been opting out of working in the healthcare system because it's just very difficult and strenuous for them. So the NDP has made it much more difficult to live and enjoy a rewarding career. As far as the vaccination, it's an issue that I feel strongly about. There are conspiracy theories that attack different things, and vaccines was attacked heavily by conspiracy theories. And you can get any idea and end up having it become something completely different on the other side. I grew up with vaccines. I'm fully vaccinated. I think they're an important part of the healthcare system.
Coralie?
Thanks, Lisa. Tough to answer this in a minute. I'll do my best. I think we have to break it into 2 parts. First of all, recognizing that this riding covers both Northern Health and Interior Health. Both health authorities operate extraordinarily different. The first thing I'm calling on is we need an audit of Northern Health. We need to understand what is exactly going on so that we can work towards fixing it. The second thing I'll say is we need to remove the gag order. There's a gag order that exists within healthcare where the health professionals can't speak up. In 2014, we were in the same situation. We were losing 9 doctors, and we said we needed to come together. We needed to listen to the doctors to understand why they were leaving. We sat in a room together with elected officials, Northern Health, and we figured out a solution. We figured out why they were leaving, and we addressed it. So remove the gag order, audit Northern Health. And the final thing I'll say is we need to be training. Do you know that 90% of people, if they train in the area, stay in the area? We need to look at the UNBC Medical School and understand how many of our local kids are actually getting access to the UNBC Medical School.
Thank you, Corley. Sorry. I know, it was a big question.
Yes.
I didn't make the questions, I'm just reading them. Don't blame me. All right, so in this question number 5, we're gonna go Randy, Sheldon, Corley. What are your government's plans to move forward with the north-south interconnector on Highway 97 over the Quesnel River, and how do you feel this project is for the economy of Northern BC? How important do you feel this project is for the economy of Northern BC? So one more time. What is your government's plan to move forward with the north-south interconnector on Highway 97 over the Quesnel River, and how important do you feel this project is for the economy of Northern BC? Randy?
Well, the question has been asked many times, and I've answered the question before with, it's not easy building that connector. There is so many things that are in the way of doing it, and it's been easy for people to go, just pass the buck and not do it. But it is the main artery to northern British Columbia. We have to fix it. So infrastructure is an important part of any government, the Green Party no different. That does need to be taken care of. Money has to be spent to look at an intelligent way to deal with the pulp mill, the railroad bridge, the Ailing Bridge that's there already. If that falls down, nobody can get to Prince George. Or if they could, it would be a pretty long drive. So it needs to be taken care of. I don't have the Green Party's plan for it, I'll be honest. I don't know the details that the Green Party would put forward, but they're not stupid and they know it needs to be done.
I've already made that issue a priority for me in this riding. I've made it well known to John Rustad that it's a priority in this riding, and I've very much heard it everywhere I've gone. And I do think that it's important that the people who would be displaced by the construction of the interconnector are treated with respect and they're properly compensated for any of their losses that they would endure because of that. However, this is major infrastructure, and the good old days of Phil Ghilardi and Ben Ginter getting her done and building it have passed us by. The NDP has allowed this province to deteriorate. Successive governments have allowed this province to deteriorate, and we're going to start seeing problems with these bridges, our roads, our highways. Infrastructure is failing. This needs to be part of a larger look at infrastructure in the province of British Columbia, and I pledge to make sure that I make that interconnector and fixing the infrastructure around here a priority when I'm elected your MLA.
Thank you. Corley?
I want to acknowledge the work of the Chamber of Commerce and the City of Quesnel for the work that they are doing on that. Where I think we will have success on this project is recognizing that this is no longer just, for years we've talked about this as being the Quesnel interchange or the Quesnel project. It is not. It is the north-south interconnector. This is the critical piece of infrastructure that connects the north and the south of the province of British Columbia. And we learned that in 2017 when the wildfires impacted the highway and no one could get through. If something happens to that bridge, the economy of northern British Columbia shuts down. So this is not a Quesnel project. This is not a Prince George North Cariboo project. This is a provincial project of importance, and I think I also want to recognize that the Mayor and Council of Prince George have also wrote a letter of support, and I know that there is work that both the Chamber and the City are doing to ensure other communities are writing support letters for this important project.
Thank you, Corley. I have a little mini Christmas present. I was told by the authorities that we are now going to give you a minute and a half for your questions. So you get a full minute before the yellow light comes on, and that is your early Christmas present from Kathy. So as we move into the next question, we go Corley, Randy, and Sheldon. Do you support a review of the 5-day mandatory sick leave policy and reducing the financial impact on small and medium-sized business owners and operators? Again, the question is, do you support a review of the 5-day mandatory sick leave policy and reducing the financial impact on small and medium-sized business owners and operators? Corley?
Thank you very much. We're the only province left in the country that has continued with the 5-day sick leave. It came out of COVID at a time when, of course, we needed to look at that. But now, as I've talked earlier through this, the challenges that small, medium-sized businesses are facing, the affordability challenges, we need to review that, and you have my commitment to look at that, as well as the other increase in taxation that is putting I think it's 52% of businesses concerned that they may not be able to keep their doors open over the next 4 years. We should be paying very, very close attention to this, and this is one of the pieces, so yes, I would review it.
Thank you. Randy?
So if you're sick, you deserve to go home. If you are having trouble paying the bills, having 5 days of sick pay isn't an outrageous amount of money. And what is the difference to come to work sick, to make other people sick? You know, it doesn't make sense. If we have 5 days, at least it gives somebody a chance to get to the doctor, see what's going on. And it's unfortunate that there might be some small businesses that are going to have trouble running today because they don't have any employees or the key employee. But sick pay is also something that's tied with unions. Unions are good at fighting for the rights and benefits of their employees. So I think having sick leave, I work for the city of Quesnel, that's something I didn't say. I have accumulated sick time. I'm not taken because I'm not sick, but it's nice to know that it's there for me. I think having a mandate of having 5 days of sick time is not an outrageous amount of money or time for any employee, and having temporary workers that can fill in spots would be part of a program that would make it easy for people who really need a temporary hand for a couple of days. But I think sick time is an important factor for a healthy family.
Thank you, Randy. Sheldon?
Well, having been a faculty bargainer and bargained sick leave and sick time and maternity leave and a whole bunch of other things when I was doing that kind of work, I very much respect the need of making sure that workers are protected if they are sick. However, we do have to make sure we can deal with the costs that are associated with running a business. And decisions around businesses need to be in the hands of the business, and it needs to be in a cooperative effort with their workers. If someone is sick, you should stay home, and you should be able to get well. And as was duly noted, you shouldn't have to be afraid of losing money because you're sick when you're being forced to choose between paying your rent and going to work. So I think it's important to review such things. I think it's important to look at them holistically and to figure out what the best path is going forward to make sure that the needs of people are met and that the needs of businesses and the affordability crisis businesses facing are fairly dealt with. Business owners need to be responsible with how they treat their workers, that's for sure. However, workers also need to be responsible with sick time.
Thank you. In this order, we're going to go Sheldon, Coralie, Randy, and this one is a bit long. Does your party support targeted investments to improve community safety? This would include the implementation of a comprehensive policy framework and required investments that shift the focus from just harm reduction to include prevention, treatment, and enforcement. Explain how you plan to address these complex issues. So one more time. Does your party support targeted investments to improve community safety? This would include the implementation of a comprehensive policy framework and required investments that shift the focus from just harm reduction to include prevention, treatment, and enforcement. Explain how you plan to address these complex issues. Sheldon?
Thank you for the question, Lisa. The idea of crime prevention is a very important one. I worked with the youth criminal justice system when I was working as a relief worker at Camp Trapping, which was a facility that dealt with crime. Did this in the 90s for a number of years. And so do we support trying to look after making sure that you have target investment to limit and end these kinds of criminal activities? Sure. We need to make sure that youth in particular are given opportunities, economic opportunities, so they're not tempted to follow paths of crime, and that they are able to work and prosper in their communities. I think the police have been fairly effective, as the bylaw enforcement people in both Prince George, Quesnel, and other communities, in trying to make sure they're doing the best they can with the resources they have. But I do know that their resources are very stretched, and they do need a lot of help. And I also know that businesses are getting awfully tired of the vandalism and the trouble that they're facing that goes on. And it's often a very small number of people committing the major crimes over and over again. I remember working with one young fellow who was responsible for stealing over 300 cars. And when he was captured, the crime wave ended. And this was many years ago. But I think the point is taken that if you work on education, you work on crime prevention, and you have strategies to deal with it, you can limit crime quite a bit.
Thank you. Coralie?
Thank you very much. I think targeted investment is critical, and I think we need to look at the full continuum of care. I'd like to take a moment to talk about our education system and the fact that I am deeply concerned that we do not have all of the necessary services to support our young people and our early childhood years. If you look at reports, they say by grade 4, you determine the outcome of many of our youth. And I think we need to be looking at that. We need to be making sure we've got the counselors. The fact that an educational assistant makes $31,000 a year is ridiculous. We need to be looking at how we make the investments in our school system to make sure our kids are supported, because we're seeing more and more young people that are falling through the cracks, and we need to address that. We also need to make sure that we're advocating for a therapeutic community. I looked at Baldy Hughes and it's not operational. Where do we send people for help? Where do we get the services in our region to actually help support people? We need to look at that. And finally, yes, there needs to be a prolific offender program and restorative justice like we've had in the past, because we know when we've done the research in the past, I think to Sheldon's point, I think it was 12 people did 80% of the crime in the community. So let's look at those 12 people as a community and figure out how we're moving forward. But it has to include RCMP, it has to include Crown. They're often missing from that, and I'll probably say more after.
Randy?
It's a huge issue. It deals with the dark side of humans, people willing to do things that are against the law. Like I mentioned before, people become addicted and become dependent on things, which then changes what they will do to get those drugs. And the problem is the police are overloaded with things to do. They are social workers, they're going to domestic disputes, somebody's breaking into a house. There is a million things and they're not trained to be mental health workers. But what happens within the criminal justice system is the police do their work, they do the paperwork, they file the charges, and the Crown goes, no, we're not going to charge. And that happens over and over and over again. The police are doing their work. The criminal justice system, the Crown, is not holding people accountable. And there is just too many ways that people get away with things. And you can tie mental health and addiction and all this stuff together, but they need to be separated out and looked at individually. And I'm not a big one for just throwing people in the penitentiary, but there needs to be programs that people can have a chance to break the cycle that they've been on. And the crime in all cities is something that has to be dealt with.
Thank you. For our next question, we will go Randy, Sheldon, Coralie. A few days after Truth and Reconciliation Day, what is your position about residential schools? How will you implement the recommended 94 calls to action if any of you were elected? What does reconciliation look like from your political standpoint? So again, the question is, a few days after the Truth and Reconciliation Day, what is your position about residential schools? How will you implement the recommended 94 calls to action if any of you were elected? And what does reconciliation look like from your political standpoint? Randy?
If you saw me smile there, don't misinterpret what I was thinking. I spent many years involved in Native spirituality. I've written 2 books, 2 self-help books. I was involved with, I've been in more sweat lodges than most First Nations people. I've been in hundreds of healing circles. I've been to the Sundance. What I started hearing when I was going to sweat lodges, and this is from Phil Larondel, he had an All My Relations bookstore in Vancouver, and he was the one, he was my mentor and guided me into being involved in Native spirituality. 30 years ago, I started hearing about people talking about residential schools and the pain and the family torture and and I'm kind of going, what is this they're talking about? And I started hearing other people talking about it, and I started asking Phil, I go, what is this all about? Nobody knew anything about it. It's a huge part of Canadian history, and it was hidden because it's ugly and it's nasty, and they tried to just remove the Indian from the Indian, basically. And it has a long-lasting, to this day, effect on the self-esteem of very many First Nations people. I am all for giving power and culture back to First Nations so they can heal the wounds that, quite frankly, colonialism inflicted on them.
Thank you, Randy. Sheldon?
Thank you for the question. Canada's treatment of First Nations people over well over a century has been abysmal. It's been terrible. First Nations people have suffered through the residential school system, which started off as craft industrial trade schools. Many of them were voluntary when they started. In 1922, when the Liberals brought in residential schools officially, they're changing them from the previous incarnations, is when it started to get kind of nasty. And in the residential school system, it was modeled in large degree on other educational models of the time, and they didn't really fit well with what was going on. Governments of the day were bringing together people from different nations, some of whom were not compatible, some of them who were very compatible, and they meshed it all together, and they made a terrible mess of it. They didn't have the resources to be able to run it as a government program, so they gave this to the churches. So you had the different churches in this, and I think it's very important to understand and work with Native communities to make sure that their needs are met, that there is understanding of the pain that system caused. I met with Chief LeBrun today and his council to discuss these very issues. And I was very heartened by the reception that I received, and that I'm looking forward to working with the Native communities in this riding to ensure that these bad moments in Canadian history can be moved on from, but not forgotten.
Thank you. Coralie?
Words matter. And if we're going to have true reconciliation, we need to be listening to our elders. We need to be understanding their experiences. We need to be respecting them enough to listen. And when we have people that challenge their experiences, Sheldon, and put out words that cause pain to our elders, I think it's up to all of us to stand up for that. I was reflecting on what I heard from our elders, and the fact that parents were threatened with the RCMP that they would be put in jail. They didn't have their children taken. And to have comments that it improved their grammar or that there was opportunities in residential schools is disgusting. And I think that we should be calling it out. And I think that is our role. That is our role in this community to stand up, to support our elders, and to make sure that nobody disbelieves what they have said. I'll end with this, that the Honorable Justice Murray Sinclair points to education as the key to reconciliation, and I think that's an important place to go.
On to our next question. We will start with Coralie, then Sheldon, then Randy. Private property owners and owners are increasingly meeting deactivated roads that also impede fire access this summer. Traditional territory that is no longer available to all the taxpaying residents. Where do you stand on access for all residents? Again, private property owners are increasingly meeting deactivated roads that also impeded fire access this summer. Traditional territory that is no longer available to all the taxpaying residents. Where do you stand on access for all residents? Coralie?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Deactivation of roads is coming from, if you talk to FLNRO and you look at some of the, there was a select standing committee that reviewed it and audited, thank you, can't hear, sorry, I'm probably talking too fast. Deactivation of roads is a significant issue, and it is a move that the Forest Lands Now to Resources is looking at to remove liability of the Crown, and I think that is a significant concern. I want you to know, and I stood up during estimates, that $25,000 is the amount of money that this region has, the Cariboo Regional has, to support our rural roads. So that is why they're deactivating these roads, and what people do not understand, what the government does not understand, and there are speeches that I've made in the House, the fact that people live out in these areas, they depend on these areas, and when you pull a bridge from one side of the road and then the Forest Service road, when you talk to, say, the Quesnel Forest District is investing in one of the Forest Service roads, but then you talk to the Williams Lake Forest Service road and they're pulling the bridge, it's absolutely ridiculous. So we do need a strategy on that. It's critically important because resource roads are an investment that each of us have put in through the resources that we have in our community.
Thank you. Sheldon?
Thank you. It's certainly the case that we've been seeing access denied for more and more people in more and more parts of this province, and that's not a good thing. There most certainly needs to be a strategy to support the infrastructure that exists. However, I've seen perfectly good roads, which were well maintained and not in any need of being deactivated, given grand ditches that nobody can get across with anything. And I don't see this as being necessary. I think that British Columbia is for all British Columbians, and that the access needs to be there for all of the people. And if we're looking at a strategy to deal with this, it needs to come with the understanding that if you are going to be putting out fires, you need to have these roads open, and you need to have them available for fire crews to get to where the problem is rapidly. Rather than having to wait and build a road to get to a fire, you need to be able to have access to it. So this is affecting recreation, it's affecting safety, it's affecting hunting opportunities for both First Nations and for other non-First Nations hunters and recreational users. And it needs to be something that we can all work together to ensure that if a road is going to be deactivated, there's a darn good reason for it, and it's well understood, and that people have an opportunity to speak on it.
Thank you. Randy?
Well, for my colleague on the Conservative side to say British Columbia should be accessible to all British Columbians, why do we say at the beginning of a speech that we're on the unceded territory of the Lataco Dene? Is that just something to say? Do we get to decide what they do with their territory? Well, we want to go camping on your stuff. Geez, I'm a British Columbian. You know, there has to be meaning in the words that you actually say. There has to be some kind of give back to the stuff that we've taken away. forestry has leveled some unceded territory, and the First Nations get almost nothing. The more roads through a piece of land, the worse it is for biodiversity. Roads are things that animals don't like, but it's like biodiversity is something that's been forgotten about. My colleague talks about hunting. I don't know if you've noticed, I drove for Arrow for 10 years. I drove from here to Dunkley every day. When I started, I saw moose every day. Every day. Okay, maybe not every day, but most days. I haven't seen a moose on that road for I don't know how long. And everybody here can probably agree with that. If you've been to Prince George, it's pretty rare you see a moose now. Animals are disappearing at an unprecedented rate.
Thank you, Randy.
Because of industry.
We're going to move on to question number 10, and after this, we're going to take a little break. So this order will be Sheldon, Randy, and Coralie. Do you support the improved delivery, increased access, and awareness of the Securing Small Business Rebate Program? And will you extend the program beyond its current end date of January 2025? Do you support the improved delivery, increased access, and awareness of the Securing Small Business Rebate Program? And will you extend the program beyond its current end date of January 2025? Sheldon?
I think that should the Conservative Party form government, we're going to have conversations about all kinds of rebates and all kinds of strategies, and we're going to have to make sure that we review them carefully to make sure that they're best interests of the business community and of the province. And I don't want to be committing to any policy or strategy on that at this point. I think we have to look at it carefully and make sure that continuing that is not causing damage, and that if we are going to continue with it, that it is going to actually provide help that's needed and welcome in the business community. If we just go in and commit to all of the programs and strategies that currently exist that the NDP and the previous Liberal government had brought into bear without having an eye to that deficit spending in the annual budget and the debt, we'd be making a disservice to British Columbians.
Thank you. Randy?
I don't know if you might recognize me. I'm known as the garlic guy. I own and operate Oddball Garlic Company. I'm a small business owner. I work full-time for the city, and I have my own business, and I live check to check. You know, if people think I got a lot of money, I don't. It's hard. Small businesses are very much on the radar of the Green Party because it feeds and fuels and creates innovation and creativity and products that don't exist. My product never existed before I created it, and some people they get angry when they run out. They say, I don't eat salmon anymore because I ran out of nasty nectar. You know, you have to create products that are innovative and that other people will value. The Green Party is big on value added. I took the garlic I grew, I turned it into a product, and I created a business. That's called value adding and making something more valuable. So take a raw ingredient like wood and build furniture with it or something along that line. There's so many things we could be doing to add value to what we're creating, and that money would be in the community. So small businesses are critically important.
Thank you, Randy. Coralie?
Thanks, Lisa. Small businesses are the backbone of our community. And when you're walking down our main streets and when you're looking at our different business improvement areas, our small businesses are vital. They are the ones that are supporting our hockey team. They are the ones that are supporting our kids' arts or our dance. And if we do not start listening to the needs of our small business communities, we are going to see more and more small businesses close in this community and communities across this province. The benefit of voting for an independent is you are my boss. The community is my boss. It is not some party leader. It is not a party that dictates what I should say. It is you that tell me the voice that I need to deliver to Victoria. So if you, as the small business communities, are saying that we need this to secure the rebate program, I deliver that message to Victoria. I fight for our small businesses, make sure we're heard, and make sure that we provide an environment that ensures that our small businesses are supported, that they can grow and thrive in our region.
All right. This order will be Randy, Coralie, and Sheldon. Quesnel makes up roughly 2/3 of the Cariboo North riding. What makes you think you will be a good representative of our city and its needs? What does your party think Quesnel's biggest problem is, and how will your party attempt to alleviate or solve it? Again, Quesnel makes up roughly 2/3 of the Cariboo North riding. What makes you think you will be a good representative of our city and its needs? What does your party think Quesnel's biggest problem is, and how will your party attempt to alleviate or solve it? Randy?
Well, I know this city. I've been here at different times, doing different jobs, seeing different things. Do I go to all the bowling tournaments and stuff like that? No, I'm a pretty busy guy. I have my own business. I work full time. I worked for Arrow. I've been quite involved in just seeing how this city works. Now, have I seen it from a political side like Coralie has? No. Have I seen it from Sheldon's perspective? No, I've seen it from my own. And there's lots that can be done, needs to be done. I worked for the city, worked at the landfill. I was stunned at how much we throw away. Not garbage, leaves, branches, wood, material, all this stuff. What it happens to it gets ground up and burned across the road for energy. And as a farmer, I'm going, this should be compost. We should be composting this, turning it back into dirt and giving it to the people of Quesnel, and then have a big greenhouse. So I'm proposing I've put it out there already, like whether I win or lose, I'm gonna propose a major composting operation for food security for the people of Quesnel, that you can come and get the compost for free and use it to grow your own food. Food security is a huge issue, and I've got a red light
Thank you,
looking
Randy.
at me, so I'm done. Thanks.
Coralie?
Thank you very much. I apologize that I did not realize you couldn't hear me, so hopefully, is that better in the back? Thanks, everyone. I thought everyone was just being kind and doing the hi. Nice to see you. I appreciate that. Look, I'd like to spend a moment, if I can, on, obviously I was born and raised here. I'm the 4th generation. My family moved here to Moose Heights in 1933. Very deep roots, agriculture roots in this region, and loved and have been so privileged to grow up here. But I also spent 14 years with the Chamber of Commerce, working closely with our small business community. And that has provided me with a very unique understanding of the importance of this community to the region. It represents 2/3 of the riding, but it also looks after, there are 41 communities that are around this Quesnel, and I think often people do not realize how many small communities that Quesnel actually provides service to. On the Chamber of Comment, I realize I wasn't very clear on the sick day, so I'm going to use my last few seconds to say that the challenge with the review of the 5 sick days is when people aren't sick, and there is an expectation that small businesses have to pay, we need to review that. So thank you, needed to clarify that. Thanks.
Thank you, Coralie. Sheldon?
Thank you, Lisa. The biggest problem, wow, I think that's not really the right question. There are a number of problems that affect Quesnel and this region. My family's been in the region since my grandfather moved to Prince George in 1930, railroader. And problems with infrastructure, healthcare, making sure that we have the needs of this community met in healthcare, education, to anchor people here, and to provide the economic opportunities that make this area so important. Promoting primary and secondary industry. Primary industry has been under a lot of attack lately. You heard my Green Party friend, he's hammering away at primary industry a fair bit. And I got to disagree with him. I think primary industry is an important driver and it needs to be supported. 2/3 of the people do live south of Hickson, and that's an important consideration. I live in Prince George. That doesn't mean that Prince George is the center of the universe in my world in this riding. I put some 30,000 kilometers on my Chevy Silverado in the last 9 months. It's been going every corner of this place. My parents used to take me in the back of the camper with my sister and my 2 brothers. We drive all over the place and see this beautiful area that we live in the central part of British Columbia. It's got to be treated seriously. It's got to be an area that is a priority, and it's my priority.
Thank you, Shelton. This order will be Coralie, Randy, and Sheldon. What is your party planning to do to provide fiber supply security to retain the few sawmills left in BC? The second part of that is, in light of the extreme shortages of fiber supply for BC mills, where do you stand on raw log exports? So again, what is your party planning to do to provide fiber supply security to retain the few sawmills left in BC? And in light of the extreme shortage of fiber supplies for BC mills, where do you stand on the raw log exports? Coralie?
Thank you very much. I had the opportunity this afternoon as well to meet with Chief and Council of Lataco to talk about the opportunities around sustainable logging and selective logging. We went through the mountain pine beetle. We knew that we would come to where the midterm is, where we had to evaluate where our fiber is and where we get the greatest value. Value added is a critical component to our forest economy, but it's also critically important to understand that we do utilize the fiber that we have. When you look at the fact that we have an energy system that we have, we are benefiting tonight from the fact that we have district heating at Cariboo Pulp. We have a pulp mill, we have a sawmill, we have the plywood plant, we have a very diversified economy of fiber, but we are going to have to look at that. I stood up in the House, the other thing I said is we need to get access to burnt fiber. Why is it that Alberta was able to get permits out the door in 3 weeks after the wildfires and we're still waiting to get access to burnt fiber in this riding? That fiber could help support keeping jobs and people employed in this community. We've got to look at things like that. We've got to look at the opportunity around manufacturing of homes and how you can look at the value-added sector. And there's a lot of opportunities there.
Thank you, Coralie.
And there's a red light.
Sheldon?
Thank you. I think a key factor in ensuring fiber supply viability is to streamline the permitting process. The permitting process for fiber has been abysmal under this NDP government, and it's been abysmal for a very long time. You can look at the graphing and you can see the permit approvals going down and down and down, while there's still plenty of fiber out there that is accessible and available for our mills. We're seeing a terrible exodus of major forest companies from British Columbia, some of them which were started here because of the ideological nonsense that this NDP government has foisted upon British Columbians, and that needs to stop. We need to make sure that our companies, our forest industry is welcome and it's treated with the respect that it tries to bring to our communities. The other aspect of this is to work well with the Indigenous communities to make sure that their needs and concerns are addressed along with the industrial needs for harvesting the trees. I oppose raw log exports. I think that there does need to be value added to the products we produce in this province. And I think we're seeing more and more problems with relying on foreign entities producing goods that we buy from them rather than producing things ourselves. British Columbia needs to be open for business, and British Columbians need to be doing the work to support each other.
Thank you. We're going to start this round. Sheldon, Coralie, and Randy.
Get to answer.
Oh, Randy, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I often get forgotten about.
He's a presence here,
How do you miss me? Jeez.
right?
So my conservative, my conservative colleague in some ways extends that myth that there's lots of fiber out there and it should be available to the mills, and that's not true. Was there tons of fiber at one time? Sure. And by the way, it's not fiber, it's a forest that has billions of living things in it. It's not just a tree farm. It actually has things, there's life in a forest, and we treat it like a fiber reserve, you know? It's not. It's the life of what used to be beautiful British Columbia. It's not anymore. So what I see, first of all, the Green Party, well, I guess it would be second of all, the Green Party is completely against raw log export. It's simply clear-cutting jobs and sending them to Japan and China. That's all it is. They make the money, we don't. We get nothing out of it. The citizens of BC get nothing out of it. So I just saw the Power of Forest program, ironically, Canfor Theatre at the university, and their program to change the Forest Act is very similar to the Green Party. Stop old growth logging, stop primary forest logging, and manage the forest with eco strategy in mind. With the life in the forest needs to take precedent, or else we'll have nothing left. The soil is being depleted. Thank you.
Thank you. As we go on to question 13, now we go Sheldon, Coralie, Randy. About 70,000 people left BC for other provinces last year. Why do you think that happened, and what is your party going to do to keep people in BC? So about 70,000 people left BC for other provinces last year. Why do you think that happened, and what is your party going to do to keep people in BC? Sheldon?
Thank you for the question. Well, I think people have been talking a lot about this departure from BC, and a part of it, well, a good part of it is the ideological structure of the current socialist government that we have in this province. It's driving people away. It's driving away investment. It's driving away economic opportunity. It's destroyed our healthcare system. It's destroyed our forestry. It's destroyed our mining. Our education system is full of ideological problems that have been created by this socialist government, and they're not taking responsibility for them. And the NDP's decisions are forcing people to look at this province and say, it's not what it was when I came here, it's not what it was when I was born here, and they're being forced to take opportunities elsewhere. Well, British Columbia needs to be open for business again. We need to have those opportunities back here. We need to make sure that British Columbians have good jobs, not just part-time jobs or multiple part-time jobs, which seems to be the norm under this NDP government, but real jobs that provide real value and encourage people to raise their families here and make sure their families are happy to stay here. We need to promote agriculture and make sure that farmers are respected and that their needs are also being met in this economy. Healthcare. Let's get rid of Bill 36. Let's make sure that we are not chasing away our healthcare professionals, and we're making sure that they are welcome to come back and enjoy a good, positive life, making a contribution to our province.
Thank you. Coralie?
Thank you very much. As an independent, I get to really focus on what's happening in our community and why people may be leaving from our community. And there are a lot of things that are challenging in the sense that we have one of the most expensive jurisdictions to live in North America, and that certainly adds to it. But I want to focus on opportunities, if I may. And a message that what I want to ensure that our young people know that there are opportunities here. The first is to address the housing challenges that we have. And I think that there are certainly opportunities that we can look at throughout this entire region where we can start looking at building affordable housing so that our young people can have hope of home ownership. I think that's critically important. The second piece that I've heard is so many young people do not feel post-secondary education is affordable. They're challenged with the fact of, do they make the investment in their future for post-secondary, or do they make the decision to perhaps save for a home? And that limits the potential over the long term. We have to address the challenges with post-secondary education so young people can reach for their dreams, follow their hearts, and know that there is an opportunities in the region. We also need to look at how we can grow our economy. We are blessed with so many opportunities in our region.
Thank you, Coralie.
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
it's your turn.
All right. So one of the things the Green Party proposes is vastly expanding the transportation, the transit system. And that's not just in the Lower Mainland, that's all over the province. So people can commute from Prince George to Quesnel if they wanted to. It's not just the Greyhound bus, it's an ongoing program of expanding transportation in perpetuity, because you need to be able to move people around. If you're in a town like Quesnel and you're stuck here and you don't have a job and you don't see one, you're gonna leave. You're gonna go somewhere else. But if the opportunity to get a job and still stay at home with mom and dad or whatever the case may be. A lot of young people are disillusioned with politics. How many young people are in this room right now? Not a lot, not very many. Thank you for coming, by the way, the few that are here, way to go. It's something that they don't believe in, they don't care about. They're just gonna go to the city where they can have jobs, but education is critically important because we need to bolster the education and the trades, that you'd made that point earlier, because the trades are very important and we need to build things and we need to repair stuff, and there are good paying jobs in every city if you have the training for it. So it's transportation and training, and those things will help people feel like they can stay here.
Thank you. Question 14, we're going to start with Randy, go to Coralie, and then Sheldon, and it is, how is climate change impacting our local economy, and what measures do you propose to address climate change? Again, how is climate change impacting our local economy, and what measures do you propose to address climate change? Randy?
Well, it's a huge issue. I talk about it. I posted Sonia Furstenau's news release about it, her piece, and I put it on WTF Quesnel, and imagine the responses I got, because people going, there's been carbon forever, we need carbon, plants breathe in carbon and breathe out oxygen, and it's the sort of thing that, yes, that's true, but I wrote a response that it's like, if you look at oil, it's literally stored sunlight from millions of years ago. And it's stored energy that's in the ground. If we're living on a planet where we still have the sun hitting the earth and we're quickly releasing all this energy through coal, oil, everything, do you think, and I posted it because, do you think maybe it might have a chance, use your imagination, stretch it a little, it just could possibly have an effect on the climate, maybe, because it's like, people don't get it. They go, it's all crap. The Green Party takes climate change very seriously, phasing out fossil fuels. It's a long-term project. It's not gonna happen right away, but we need to look at what makes sense for this planet. And this never made sense to me as a child. Like I said, I've been a green person my whole life, but I looked at stuff and I go, well, this doesn't make sense,
Thank you,
Children
Randy.
can figure it out.
Coralie?
Thanks, Lisa. First, I believe that climate change is real, and we have experienced this increasingly over the last few years. I want to look at the community, though, again, and address the challenges, but also look at the opportunities. I see Fire Smart guy in the back. I think that's critically important. Ted, thanks for being here this evening. Wildfire management is a critical aspect of something that we need to look at. We talked a little bit about resource roads and infrastructure a little bit earlier. It does nothing when the government invests significant money on building infrastructure to address climate change without addressing the fact that you need maintenance of infrastructure to address climate change. So when you're not addressing the culverts and the ditching and doing all of that specific important maintenance piece, you cut back the costs on that, you're going to have problems. And so we need to address that. Over 150 roads damaged one year, 200 the next year. The cost to taxpayers on that and the cost to people's lives for not addressing maintenance of the impacts of climate change. I think we need to be doubling agriculture. I think agriculture is a huge opportunity for that, but we also need to be looking and addressing soil health. We need to be looking at water management. We need to be looking at water storage, hydrology. We need to be addressing drought. That is an issue in our region, and a minute and a half is not nearly enough to address a significant issue like climate change.
Sheldon?
Well, I'll agree with Coralie that a minute and a half is not enough to address this question, but certainly climate change is a major problem that has been affecting this province for a long time. Climate changes have been going on for millennia. We are in the cusp of some climate change now. We saw this with the pine beetle epidemic. We're seeing with the drying up of water in the forests. I see it as a hunter and a person who gets out in the woods. We've seen it with the increased fire and the problems with fire management. And that's actually an ideological thing as well, because the NDP has made a number of really bad decisions about how they deal with the detritus and the debris in the forests, and that needs to be changed. But we also need to look at energy sources and energy solutions as part of a larger strategy, and that strategy has to include hydroelectric as well as gas and oil, and we need to start talking about that other source of energy, which is often not very popular, but that's nuclear power. We're going to need to have a conversation about it. A lot of people are scared of it, and I respect that view. I have concerns about it myself, but it is, if we're going to be looking at electrifying so much of the province and getting away from fossil fuels, well, we're going to have to look at other options, because our grid cannot handle the plans for 2030 as they are currently laid out. That is just not going to happen. So we need to be responsible about how we look at our energy solutions in the face of a changing environment.
Thank you, Sheldon. All right, so we're going to go Coralie, Sheldon, Randy. What does your party have planned to help BC's seniors who are struggling to make ends meet and continue to assist our youth in need? Again, what does your party have planned to help BC's seniors who are struggling to make ends meet and continue to assist our youth in need? Coralie?
Thank you, Lisa. Our seniors who built our communities deserve much better. And one of the things that I've heard very clearly is that we need better mixed options for housing for our seniors. So that is certainly an area that we need to address. Home care supports for seniors living in our rural communities is critically important. General health care in the fact that so many seniors don't have access to a doctor is critically important, and just general affordability. Never in my lifetime would I imagine that we would be in a situation where a senior is coming into my office not able to afford medication because they can't afford putting food on their tables. We have to do much better in supporting the needs of our community, and specifically our seniors, and we have to address the affordability challenges. But I'm confident that the people that in our community, if we have the ability to start addressing the significant issues, because I've seen really, really positive, good things that happen. And I don't know how the youth thing fit into that. I apologize.
It's just a question I'm reading. I didn't make the question. I understand. Sheldon?
Well, I'll take a stab at it. Perhaps if we had more youth going into geriatrics and taking training into helping seniors, that might be a good way to go. There's certainly a need for people to be able to have care and stay in their homes as long as they can. My parents, who passed away in the last few years, were fortunate to be able to stay in their homes until when they finally left this world. And I was heartened to see that they were able to do so. And they had a lot of family support and a little bit of support from community care. But not everyone has access to that. And it's very difficult in rural communities for seniors to be able to have that access. So the Conservative Party's got a plan on seniors, and this involves increasing access for beds and making sure that there's transportation available to get people to the health care they need, because it's really quite difficult to provide the quality of care in the smaller areas that the rest of the province takes for granted. And that's a real problem that's going to be expensive to overcome. And we need to be able to do something to make sure that happens. Getting rid of the inflationary programs like the carbon tax are also going to help, because if you're having to spend more of your money on tax, then you're not having that money available for food, clothing, and shelter. And we've got to make sure that those people who've built our society, built our communities, are able to go into their later years in life with a measure of enjoyment and respect.
Thank you, Sheldon. Randy?
Seniors, put them all in old folks' home. They're not working anymore anyway. Geez, contribute to society. Bunch of lazy bums. Make room for the youth. That was a form of humor, which I actually say the opposite of what I really mean. Our province, our cities, our infrastructure was built by seniors who at one time were like me, who had brown hair and a red beard. You know, like, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm getting old. I hurt, you know. Things don't function the way they used to, but they still function. There's so many seniors on the housing front. What I mentioned earlier about building communities. You can literally take a piece of land. I'm lucky enough to own 150 acres right on the Fraser River. I'm not bragging, but there's chunks of land that you could build a village, a community, and have small mini homes, and then like a center for, there'd be a kitchen. People don't have to have all the services right in their thing, but they could be a part of something. And they could take care of each other and have a nurse there, or medical facilities, or have a doctor come. Have a facility that's different than what we have now, so that people, when they're getting on in age, they feel like they belong to something and they're part of something, because they are. But unfortunately, the first thing I said is the way a lot of people think. Just ship them off to an old folks home. Grandpa's being a problem. He's, you know, it's not the way we need to do it.
Thank you, Randy. This question will be Sheldon, Randy, and Coralie. As Northern seniors, we regularly travel to urban centers for specialists and treatments. This is at great expense and hardship for fixed income taxpayers. What will you do to alleviate this? As Northern seniors, we regularly travel to urban centers for specialists and treatment. This is a great expense and hardship for fixed income taxpayers. What will you do to alleviate this? Sheldon?
Well, ideally, you have the care available in your community so you don't have to travel as far. As we're already well aware that the doctors and the nurses are leaving our community, and we need to be able to attract those professionals to be in the community so the care can be provided so people don't have to travel. I think that's the ideal circumstance. So I think incentive programs to bring doctors and nurses into the community so that they can be there for people in their community so they don't have to go the rigors of travel. I think Coralie and I were both at the Seniors Advocate meeting, in which we were told about how there are opportunities for seniors to get transportation, that we have funding programs that are currently available. However, the problem is getting people home, and often people are getting tossed out in the middle of the night, and that's not okay. You know, there's no way. I could not imagine seeing, any of my relatives being turfed out in the street after having been operated on or receiving care or treatment out of their own community and having no way to get back home. That's got to be fixed.
Thank you. Randy?
I touched on it earlier, the dogwood model, which has been, and everything that Greens propose has evidence-based, has been proven in other parts of the world. And I mean, I printed out the 2024 platform. If you wanted the website, if you grab one of these, you can go and read it for yourself, read everything that they want to achieve. It's not a bunch of tree huggers. People think that's what it is. But with seniors and the dogwood system, the model is a facility. They propose 93 facilities across the province, and that's just to begin with. It would be doctors, psychologists, nurse practitioners, and they can do a myriad of services and refer within house, so that instead of going to Prince George or having to go to Vancouver or wherever, more facility services would be available in one place. So that's your doctor. You might not get the same doctor, but your file is there. You get to see somebody when you go in. It's not just, well, we'll make an appointment for next month. It's like a clinic. It's not an urgent care clinic. Those are the worst of the worst, because you can't really make an appointment. Well, it's not an emergency thing, and it's like, I lost my doctor. My doctor, or my whole family has no doctor. So going to the doctor is the emergency for me. That's what I have to do. And it's not what we want to see. There's a better way.
Thank you, Randy. Coralie?
Yeah, Northern Health is the only health authority without a cardiac unit in British Columbia, and that is ridiculous. We need the new patient tower in Northern Health, and we need to make sure we're delivering a strong message to Victoria that there needs to be equity in healthcare. And right now, it does not exist. If you look at the amount of money that we send as a region to Victoria, we should deserve some level of service. Look, we rallied a couple of decades ago when we talked about the Northern Decade, and we came together and we said we want a cancer care facility, and we got it. We said if we work together, we're going to have the UNBC, and we made sure that our voices were heard when we all came together. We have to, because it's not good enough for our seniors to have to travel to the Lower Mainland, because it's not just about the travel, it is about the stress. Or you have a situation where my mom had a progressive disease where she could no longer travel. We have to have access to healthcare in the North. Full stop. And if we have to fight for that, if we have to stand up for that, if we have to raise our voices for that, we must do that, not just for our seniors, but for everyone in our community.
Thank you. This round will go Randy, Coralie, Sheldon. What will your government or you do to protect vulnerable groups in our community and include them? These groups such as 2SLBTQIA+, BIPOC, and disabled. Again, what will you or your government do to protect vulnerable groups in our communities and include them, such as the 2SLGBTQIA+, BIPOC, and disabled? Randy?
This one kind of hits a little close to home. Just a second. My two sons drowned in a pool many years ago. The 2-year-old passed away. Andrew, my son, he lives with us. He has a brain injury from the accident. He's 40. He's also gay. So he's a brain injured person who's gay. He's also a furry. So he's got a lot of things against him. If you'd look at people are against furries, you know. The attack of the LGBTQ2 spirit community is horrendous, disgusting, and mind your own business. You know, like, what does it matter to you? What somebody wants to do with their genitals or who they want to love and not touch their genitals at all is none of your business. It just angers me that people and conspiracy theories, you look at what's going on in the US, it's like, shut up. You know, mind your own business, because they deserve as much right to respect as anyone else does. And I've said, if you think the LGBTQ community is not from God, are you telling me that God got it wrong? You know? Disgust me.
Please explain all those abbreviations to me.
Lesbian, LGBTQ is lesbian, bisexual, gay, Q is queer, Two-Spirit is in the Native community where they have a much different, I'm sorry for answering the question, they have a much different look at gender within Native culture. They have more than two. So it's Two-Spirit where you're male and female. And that's simply science.
And BIPOC is Black, Indigenous, and people of color?
And trans.
And trans as well, yes.
Thank you. Coralie?
Randy, thank you for your vulnerability. And I want to ensure that all of our communities are safe for our kids. No one wants our kids to be bullied. No one wants our kids to feel unsafe. No one wants our kids to feel that they just don't want to go to school because they're scared. We need some more support. Our schools need to make sure that we have more resources. We need to make sure we have more counselors and psychologists and doctors and pediatricians and school support workers. There are more services that are needed in our communities, and there's more education, because whoever the next MLA will be, you will have parents that come into your office and they're seeking support. They're seeking answers or services of where they can go. And you have to be able to provide resources to those parents. I want to say one more thing, and I know probably because we're not going to have an opportunity, but I think this is the time to do that. Oh, it's right. I'll make it in my close.
Thank you. Sheldon?
Well, I'm a great believer in live and let live. Oh, usually I don't need a mic, so I got used to not having it on. I'm a great believer in live and let live. I'm not one to judge or tell people how their lifestyle is or anything like that. I believe that as a representative of government, you represent everybody. That's your job. You help everybody that needs help. And it doesn't matter what kind of background they have, what they're coming from, if they're disabled, needy, or they have a particular orientation. Regardless of whether it's something that is of interest to me, it's my job to represent everybody. That's what it is. And in ensuring that people are not bullied and not mistreated is got to be a priority. We live in a society where we're supposed to be working together for common goals, and sometimes our goals get a little bit messed up. But we've got to be compassionate. We've got to make sure that those who need help receive the help they need. It's service. It's not for self, it's for others. And if we keep that in mind, we're probably going to be just fine. And Randy, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate your story. I mean, we all have stories, and they all really do wear on a person. And I appreciate that. Thank you for bringing that forward. You're welcome.
All right, we have one more question. This one came in this evening. We're going to go Coralie, Sheldon, Randy. What would your plan be to revamp the ALR land sales for more housing? What would your plan be to revamp the ALR land sales for more housing? Coralie?
Sure. Agriculture is critical to our region and it's critical to our province. Food security is of paramount and we need to be ensuring that we look at that. But we also need to recognize that the ALR was put forward many, many years ago and that we do need to review where the most productive land is and make sure that we are doing everything necessary to be ensuring that it's productive land. I want to go back to wells for a second, just because I think they're an excellent opportunity to look at where housing opportunities exist. There's still Crown land in the District of Wells that can be accessed and to build housing. There are areas throughout our region where we can be building housing, and we need to be looking at that. And again, if you look at the official community plans, the regional growth strategies that local governments have put forward, I think we just need to go back and revisit that, because I think the work has been done over the decades of where we should be looking at housing. And I worry that we have governments coming in right now that I came from local government that do not respect local government, do not respect the knowledge of local government and the work that they're doing. I believe local governments know what's best in their community, and quite frankly, the province should stay out of the way.
Thank you. Sheldon?
I do a bit of range patrol for some ranchers around Prince George, and I shudder the thought of taking away farmland and putting buildings and parking lots and such on it, because one thing about land is they're not making any more of it, except maybe in Holland. And that's something that I think we need to be very serious about. If we're going to be talking about housing, where are you going to put it? And is it going to be on farmland? I don't think like that at all. I look at what's been going on down on the lower mainland, where I had some very rich arable land that has been overwhelmed with buildings, and that's not a good thing. I had someone tell me just a year and a half or so ago that they didn't think we needed farmers so much anymore because everything was available at the grocery store. And I was taken aback by this. I couldn't believe my ears. I mean, go to the farmers market on Saturday in Prince George or in Quesnel or in any of the other communities and see the people who produce what you eat and understand where it comes from. Get closer to your food. And I think I'd be not in favor of paving over farmland to build houses when we need that farmland to be able to produce the food that we need to have our healthy, happy populations and have that food close to where we live. I mean, all the coffee drinkers.
Thank you, Sheldon.
For a minute
Randy?
and a half, yes.
As a farmer, this is an issue that's close to my heart. I've been growing garlic for 30 years. I used to be Oddball Organics. We dropped the bureaucracy of the organic part because it's just paying someone so I can say to you that I'm organic. I was standing down in my bottom field one day and it's looking at it and there's nothing but trees. And I thought, how is it that British Columbia is growing trees in perpetuity and nobody's fertilizing it? How is it? And I'm struggling with this land because the soil that was here got eaten up by just farming it. And the answer was, well, the forests drop branches and trees, and birch trees are short cycle and they fall. And it takes a couple of forest cycle to build a deep soil, and we're losing our soil. So for the agricultural land, most of my farm is all agricultural land. Coralie's right in the sense that some agricultural land isn't really good for growing stuff on. It would be look at some real case studies and figure out what needs to be, let go of the ALR and grow or build houses on it. But also, my dad used to say they're not building any more land or they're not making any more land. As a child, I used to hear the news, farmers are having a hard time. And it's like, well, Dad, if farmers can't make a living growing food, where's our food going to come from? So again, as a child, sometimes that simple thinking is the best. I want to be a child again. You know?
Don't we all?
Yeah.
All right, so we are going to go into our final closing remarks. Each candidate is going to get 3 minutes. And we're just going to start how we started earlier with our opening remarks, and we'll just go from your guys' left to right.
I'm starting? Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much to the Chamber for this opportunity that you've given us tonight to introduce ourselves to you so you get to see us, hear us, understand our thought processes a little bit, find out more about garlic, and the other things that we're interested in. I appreciate being here. I do want to say I didn't take running as a candidate lightly. One of the things that you do when you put yourself out there is you put yourself out in the public. You're a person that everyone has a chance to examine, question, ridicule if you like, and I'm totally okay with that. I don't have anything to hide. I don't have any secrets, and I'm very, very much enamored with making this province a better place for my 2 daughters. They're one of the reasons I'm running. They said to me, "Dad, why is everything so expensive?" And I said to them, "It's 50 years of bad decisions, girls. That's what it is. 50 years of bad decisions. And we need to start making some good decisions, turn this ship around before it hits the rocks." We've got a government right now that is not friendly to the majority of the people in this province, and it's really hurting. I talk to people every day who tell me that if we, the Conservative Party, don't win this election, they're going to consider moving out of British Columbia and going somewhere else where they can prosper and where they do see a future for their families. Well, I don't think that's okay. I want to make a future for my family in this province in a place where everyone has the opportunity to prosper and do well. And I do mean everyone. And as your elected representative, I'm going to take that very seriously. I want a place where people can walk downtown and be safe, not just feel safe. I want a place where you can travel on roads that you know are not going to be sliding off into a ditch because they're sloughing and they haven't been maintained properly. I want a province where you can enjoy the recreational opportunities that this province has to bear. I want a province where you can eat food grown in your province, you can enjoy products made in your province, and you can make sure that the province in which you live is a place that you can be proud of to share with others from around the world. That's the kind of British Columbia I want, and that's the kind of member of the Legislative Assembly I want to be. I want to be someone who helps people. I want to be someone who makes a difference in people's lives in a positive way. It's a job of service. And I do thank my colleague Coralie for her years of service. I mean, it's not an easy thing to put your name on a ballot. And Randy, Coralie, Denise, and myself have all chosen to do that. And I salute each and every one of them. This is a bit of a long slog, but it's a short campaign. And I'm looking for your vote. And I hope that when the date comes on October 10th and 19th, you'll mark Sheldon Clare. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy?
I mentioned earlier about being involved in Native spirituality. I gave an elder, Pat Hendrickson from Arizona, tobacco and asked him to name me because I wanted to have a First Nations name. And the next time I saw him in a sweat lodge, he said, "I had a hard time coming up with a name for you." And he said, "I decided on Man Who Looks Down Many Roads." And I was kind of like, cool, I think. I didn't say that, but I was thinking Big Smoke or Buffalo Guy, something cool, you know? And I realized he was right. I am man who looks down many roads. I've been that way my whole life. I see problems. I come up with solutions. I try to fix things. I try to see how things can be better. Why is this like that? Going back to the root problem and touching on the why are things so expensive. There is no denying that corporate greed controls our world. And the more we can take control back for ourselves and build robust communities that have businesses that deal with the customers and the citizens of this community, We need to reform the tenure system and take the greed out of forestry and hand it back to the citizens with small and medium-sized mills doing things that can be value added within the community. This is not me making this stuff up. This is already in here, but this is the way I've always been thinking. I've been writing this stuff for a few years, and the Green Party thinks exactly the same way I do. Corporate greed is killing this planet, and it's pretty powerful. It's like going up against David and Goliath, but that's not a reason to not do it. The reason is because we're important, and what we think and what we need is important. They don't give a shit about us, excuse my language. They don't care about us. They care about shareholders' profits, and their fingers are in everything. And if you don't think that, that's just because that's what they want you to not think. They want you to think it's somebody else who did it, some other factor. It was the politicians from before. In 2022, the NDP had over 1,200 lobbyist meetings with oil and gas. That's 3 every day of the year. And that is because they're not going, hey, I think we should have better housing in Quesnel. I think we should support small business. They're going, how can we make more money out of oil and gas and do less for it? That's what they do. That's their job. Lobbyists should be illegal in the province, in my opinion. Probably won't happen. But their job is to make more money for the shareholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Coralie?
Well, Lisa, thank you for doing a great job moderating this evening, and for the Chamber of Commerce for providing this opportunity, and for all of you. I can say that many communities across this province are not having debates, and I think that's a real shame. And so the fact that we've come and had the ability to share different ideas and a different vision for the province of British Columbia is important. At this time, I think when you are considering what our future looks like and what is in the best interest for Prince George, North Cariboo, I'm asking for your vote on October 19th. I think experience is going to matter. I think this next Parliament very well could be a pivotal turning point in British Columbia. And it could be a very, very close election. So what does that mean for each of you? What does that mean for our riding? It means our voices carry extra weight. We could hold the balance of power, and that is critically important. Many people have asked, well, we've had an independent before and it didn't work that way. Why is now different? It is different because it's going to be such a close election, and it is different because there are a number of incumbents that have experience, that are fully vetted, that understand the issues in the province of British Columbia and have experience. I've served as the Minister of Small Business. I've served as the Minister of Community, Sport and Cultural Development, where we looked after local governments. I've had the ability to serve as the Minister responsible for reducing red tape. All of those issues, I think, are going to be critically valuable in this next Parliament. I've had the opportunity to serve in opposition, representing emergency management, climate readiness. I've had the privilege of serving for many years as the Shadow Minister for Post-Secondary, and if you haven't got it yet, I am absolutely passionate about the needs of post-secondary. If we want to solve issues in our communities, from healthcare to transportation to the economy, we have to make sure we have opportunities local for our kids to make sure that they can pursue their dreams and follow their hopes, and make sure that we have the workforce necessary and the capacity necessary to ensure that it's one thing to build a hospital, but if you don't have the nurses and the doctors to work in it, it's not going to work. We have to have a lens like we did when we had the Small Business Accord, where every piece of legislation had a small business lens on it. I want to make sure that we have a workforce lens on every piece of legislation brought forward. I'm asking for your support on October 19th.
So,
Oh, yeah, I forgot. I want you to vote for me, too.
So just in closing, I want to thank all of you that have come here and shared today, provided us with questions, as well as coming in and finding information. I would like to thank Lisa Footit for being our moderator. It's not an easy job. Also like to thank Jared Dick for being our timer, as well as at the back, Rogers TV for everything, and especially to all the candidates. We really appreciate you guys making time to come here, and it is important to have candidate forums like this, and I am very glad that our community was able to have one. But thank you very much, and most importantly, everyone get out and vote, and have a great night.